How many of you are not from Minnesota? Will you raise your hand? Nice. Well, welcome to Minnesota. We're really excited to have you here. We're really excited to have this opportunity to be able to share some of the lessons that we have here locally in our Palestine work. We've been having, as the Free Palestine Coalition, a minimum of one protest per week since October 7th. On October 15th, we hit a mile marker of 15,000 people at our protest in Minneapolis, which is the largest Palestine action we've ever had in the Twin Cities. And it became the largest protest we had had since the uprising after the murder of George Floyd. And so this momentum caused us to form the Free Palestine Coalition, as Yasmin introduced, and it also got the attention of many members of the Minneapolis City Council who came out to multiple protests. And tonight I wanted to talk about our work to get a ceasefire resolution passed by the Minneapolis City Council and then the St. Paul City Council. And the person that would be the best person to speak about this is Sanaa Wazwaz, who is with American Muslims for Palestine, and unfortunately she had a Ramadan event tonight and can't be here. So I'm going to do my best to be as awesome and as inspiring as Sanaa, and you'll just have to bear with me. So historically in Minnesota, we have targeted our senators, but after years of ignoring us and because the situation is so dire, we started expanding who we were willing to sort of like try to pressure. I mean, obviously the federal government has a great responsibility for this for what's going on, right? They could end U.S. aid to Israel today, right? They could stop sending weapons, but unfortunately, Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith are super double not interested in doing anything. We've also, as the Anti-War Committee, been trying to pressure the State Board of Investment. There are 4 decision makers on the State Board of Investment: the governor, the attorney general, the state auditor, and the secretary of state. And they have the ability to divest the state of Minnesota from Israeli bonds and from Israeli companies and from major weapons manufacturers like Lockheed Martin. And they haven't done nothing. And we've been going to them for years. And Anthony is going to talk more about that campaign. But what we decided to do was to really look at, okay, we have a whole other level of government that we've never done this type of pressure work with, right? I've been doing foreign policy activism for 20 years, and I've never pressured the city council to do that, right? I've spent most of my career trying to pressure the Congress to do things. And so this gave us an opportunity because we were like, these people aren't listening to us. So we decided to join the national movement to try to persuade our city council to join with the other city councils across the country who had already signed on to ceasefire resolutions. And so our first battle that we realized is that in order to work on this campaign, we really needed to address the $25 million question, which is, why is Palestine a local issue? Because so often what we got told directly was, this is not a local issue. This is an issue you should be talking about with your senators. Please go away. And so we had to be like, no, we are not going away. This actually is a local issue. And so this is something that we had to work on. We had to talk about it in our call-in day actions, in our literature, in our speeches. But we really had to hammer home the idea that actually Palestine is a local issue. And we talked about it with people. We really hammered home the fact that like this is a local issue because we are paying for this genocidal massacre with our tax dollars, yep, at the national level, at the state level. And like we have always had this demand in the local peace movement, and I'm sure in your peace movements as well, say money for human needs and not for war. And it's like we've got real problems here in our country, but we're spending money killing people we've never met before. That's ridiculous. And so we got to talk about the trade-offs that are happening, about how we don't have money to pay for student loan debt. We don't have money to pay for our public schools, but we do have money to spend, killing people in other countries. And matter of fact, we should be having a real heart-to-heart. Like, is this really what we stand for as a country? And so we got to use this as a way to talk about the fact that we should instead be investing in our children, in our healthcare, in our housing, and particularly when we were campaigning in St. Paul, we talked about the roads. The roads in St. Paul are awful. I might be a Minneapolitan, so I can say that, but whatever. We also talked about the fact that this is a local issue because our community includes many Palestinians, Arabs, and Muslims for whom this is a very real and personal issue. People in Minneapolis and St. Paul are concerned about their family members. And so to say that this is a foreign issue is to ignore the very diversity of Minneapolis and St. Paul. That's to say that we don't have Palestinians living in our own community, which is a bold-faced lie. That's not true. This is also a local issue because although I don't believe that we have actual weapons being made in Minnesota, we have weapons manufacturers that are open and do design work here in Minnesota, whether or not that's at General Dynamics in Bloomington, Lockheed Martin here in St. Paul, or we were just at Base Systems in Maple Grove. But the fact is that our tax dollars repeatedly are being given away to these companies to build these buildings here, as happened at Base Systems in Maple Grove and happened this just last year in St. Paul with Lockheed Martin. But the fact is that we are subsidizing these very weapons manufacturers that are killing people in Palestine. And so that is a local issue. And then lastly, it's important to look at the fact that hate crimes are rising across this country against Arab and Muslim people. And specifically, we've had multiple mosques in the Twin Cities that have been attacked and vandalized. And so it's important to say, look, you expect us to think that you're here to take care of our constituents. Well, these are your constituents. We have a large Muslim and Somali community here in the Twin Cities. You should be doing things to try to protect your constituents. And so and then our last argument was, you tell us that this is a federal issue. Well, the federal government isn't listening to us. And so therefore, you don't get to not listen to us too, because we know where you live, and we know where you work, and we know you, and you're going to do this for us, and we're going to make you do it. And so we did. We have some advantages as Minneapolis. First of all, we have a large and strong Somali population that is a key constituency in city politics, and they overwhelmingly support this issue. We had a member of our movement who is Muslim on the city council, and she listened to us, and she wrote city council resolution with us, and particularly wrote it with Sana Wazwaz from American Muslims for Palestine, and really took that idea of there should be Palestinian leadership on what this language should look like. We had the power of our movement. Like literally, we've been having protests of thousands of people for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And so they knew we had a real base. They knew we had a real constituency of people that they needed to listen to. And lastly, one of the reasons why I wanted to organize this panel tonight is our coalition represents what Minneapolis looks like. We had immigrant rights groups, we had police brutality groups, we had student groups, we had various different Muslim groups, but we had all these different constituencies that look like Minneapolis that are part of our coalition to say, this is something that your constituents want, need, and are insisting upon you doing, and to do it now. There's some things that we're really proud of in the Free Palestine Coalition, and one is the language that we got passed. The first is that the resolution that was passed really starts with the historical context was 75 years ago. Our resolution does not start with October 7th, because this issue did not start with October 7th. This resolution refers to genocide in multiple places. It does not skirt around what is really going on. It calls it that this is a genocide that is happening, and we were pressured by the mayor's office, and we were pressured by other members of the city council to take that word out, and we won that battle and said, no, we are not pretending that this is not a genocide. Additionally, the resolution goes further than many other cities, and it calls for a full, immediate, and permanent ceasefire, and for an end to U.S. military funding to the state of Israel, and for the release of thousands of Palestinians held indefinitely without cause in Israeli military prisons. And I believe fundamentally we wouldn't have gotten that victory. And you know, many of you have done this work for decades, and the fact is we don't get many victories. We don't. We don't win very often in the anti-war movement. It's sad. But it's okay, because when we do win, we really get excited about it. And like, this was a victory for us, and we were really excited, but we wouldn't have gotten that passage, but we also wouldn't have gotten that wording if we wouldn't have had those protests of people. And so when people say to you, do protests matter? I like to tell them the story. Yes, they do matter, because politicians only do what we make them do, and they only do stuff for us if we show up and make them do it. So this passage created some momentum here in Minnesota. Other resolutions were passed in cities like Hastings and Columbia Heights and Moorhead, and relatively quickly after Minneapolis is passed. And so then we took our battle right here to literally across the street from this hotel to St. Paul City Hall. And St. Paul has an all-women city council, and they have championed themselves as being very progressive. And we were like, this is going to work. We've got this momentum. We just got the best city council resolution passed in the whole country. This is going to be a walk in the park. The city council president is Muslim and Iranian, and she's publicly stated that she's for a ceasefire. This is totally going to work. Wow. We hit a wall. No, she was not down with helping us. As a matter of fact, she was a huge, big impediment to us passing it. And she blocked our efforts to pass it for a month with new excuses each time. It's not a local issue. We were prepped for that one. Then she said, there's a rule that we can't pass foreign policy resolutions. And then there was the whole, you don't have enough votes. And we were like, let's see. Let's have an actual vote. Let's have people go on the record. They didn't want to do that. But so then we had protests, we had call-in days, we were disrupting their meetings. I got to talk about how much I really felt about the issue when they were only having people speak about the zoo, the Coma Park Zoo. I then turned it into talking about, the prison, the Gaza is. But anyway, we disrupted their meetings and they weren't able to get things done. And so eventually they caved in and they passed unanimously a weak-ass resolution, but they passed one because they were like, you got to go. We are tired of you here. So we won that one too. And now these resolution battles are happening at Northfield and in Duluth. And that brings me to my last point, which is, why do these campaigns for a ceasefire resolution matter? I've had many people say to me, these ceasefire resolutions are just symbolic. These ceasefire resolutions are just an opportunity to suck us into lobbying with politicians. And the fact of the matter is that this doesn't have to turn into a black hole of effort where you just spend your time in backroom conversations with politicians, because that's not how real change happens. Real change happens because you organize protests, because you organize momentum, because you organize people to put on that pressure. But these resolutions were very helpful for us in a couple of ways. One, it broke through the media silence about Palestine. After the first couple of months, the media was not interested in covering our street protests, regardless of how big they were. They had moved on, which is disgusting, because this is a genocide happening. I'm sorry that you don't think this is sexy enough for you, but for whatever reason, they found things like us occupying city council meetings and us arguing with city council members and us showing up with red paint on our hands. They thought that was photogenic and interesting, and so they covered it, and they let us use their newspapers as a platform by which to talk about what's going on in Palestine. They let us use their op-ed pages, where we got op-eds published that we've never been able to get published before. But they gave us news coverage in a way that they had ceased giving it to us. It also gave us an opportunity to talk about Palestine with people in a way that people felt accessible about. For example, I was watching my daughter's hockey game. I think I'm just watching hockey, but no, I'm getting an opportunity to have random people come up to me being like, Meredith, I see you're working on that ceasefire. Will you please explain that to me? And so that's great. I know a lot more about Palestine than I do about what constitutes a call for hockey, even though I've been watching it for like a long time. I still don't understand. That all looks like you just beat the crap out of this other kid. I don't understand why that's a call and that's not a call, but I can totally talk to you about why this is an important issue. And I had conversations with moms while watching hockey games that then turned into phone calls that they made, and it gave them an opportunity to be able to ask a question. And I think it's because we weren't talking about a conflict that was somewhere else. We were talking about an issue that their own city council, that our own city council was addressing, and it gave them an opening by which to ask questions that they really wanted to ask. And I think that's what's important, is that we need to move people forward. And this resolution battle gave us an opportunity to do that. And then also, this resolution battle, because we kept tying it to, why is this a local issue, it gave us the opportunity to talk about how our tax dollars are being spent. And I fundamentally do not believe that Americans want their taxpayer dollars to be spent killing children and having them fall under giant buildings of rubble and then be left there. I don't believe that that's what people want to do. I only believe that people let that happen because they are fundamentally ignorant. I don't think that people understand that their taxpayer dollars are paying for those bombs. And so this campaign gave us a way to raise the level of political awareness in this city, and that is fundamentally important and crucial to this battle for a free Palestine, because Americans must understand that they need to look in the mirror. That they need to look in the mirror and see the fact that they are responsible, that we have blood on our hands because our government is doing this, and we have a fundamental responsibility to say no. And this resolution battle gave us a vehicle by which to do that. And so now Minneapolis has joined with more than 100 cities that have passed ceasefire resolutions. These cities include places like Chicago, San Francisco, Atlanta, Detroit, Seattle. And what's important to understand is that all of these cities are essential for a Democrat to get elected president. Uh-oh. This momentum was followed up by the uncommitted primary movement, and the Biden administration and his campaign are terrified that they are going to lose as a result of their unconditional support for Israel's genocide. And we need to keep up this momentum between now and August because we need to win. We have a responsibility to keep speaking out. We have a responsibility to keep protesting. And I hope that this weekend will be inspiring for you so that you can go home and keep up protesting and keep those chants going. Thank you very much.